This is our universe. Both you and I live in it. But this is our side of the story. This is our planet Earth.
Welcome to the United States. We're a country that is part of our larger planet Earth. Our history has stood the test of time. But what makes us exceptional, you might ask? Well, you'll soon find out.
This is the story of American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism is built on the ideology that our United States has unique circumstances of democracy and freedom that make us different than any other country before. This ideology has persisted through our entire existence as a country on the planet Earth. Since early settlement, America held the belief of this American exceptionalism. John Winthrop's sermon, A City Upon a Hill, from 1630, depicts this exceptional value. He said, "For we must consider that we shall be a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us." Winthrop held the belief that America had unique qualities that other countries would look towards to emulate. The message from this sermon still echoes in modern history. Many presidents had used references to a city upon a hill in their speeches, such as President Kennedy and President Reagan.
"We must always consider," he said, "that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all peoples are upon us."
The past few days, when I've been at that window upstairs, I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill. The phrase comes from John Winthrop, who wrote it to describe the America he imagined. What he imagined was important because he was an early pilgrim, an early freedom man. He journeyed here on what today we'd call a little wooden boat. And like the other pilgrims, he was looking for a home that would be free. I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace.
The theme of American exceptionalism as a glimmering city in which others would turn to is still believed today. The pure continuity of this belief proves that Americans are strong in their ideals and hold their country in high esteem. Therefore, America is truly exceptional.
The Emancipation Proclamation was a presidential proclamation and executive order issued by the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, on January 1st, 1863. It was issued as a measure of total war during the American Civil War, directed towards all areas in rebellion and all segments of the executive branch of the United States, including the Army. This legislative measure changed the federal legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans in the Confederate States of the South from slave to free. Under this proclamation, slaves who escaped the control of the Confederate government and their owners immediately became free.
All persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforth, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to suppress such persons, or any of them, in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom.
Though met with much resistance from the South, the proclamation resulted in the liberation of all former slaves upon the surrender of the Confederacy. 3 years later, the 13th Amendment was ratified in December of 1865. This solidified the freedom of all former slaves from simply a measure of war to an official alteration to the Constitution. The proclamation is crucial to the history of the United States because it paves the pathway for the 13th Amendment. Without Lincoln setting this precedent of enslaved Africans being freed in the Union, the results after the Civil War may have been very different. At the time, the goal of the majority of the Republican Party was not to abolish slavery, but to contain it. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation changed the course of U.S. history by committing the nation to emancipation on a federal level and paving the pathway for future equality in not only the nation, but the world, further exhibiting our American exceptionalism. Though some may dismiss national parks when discussing impactful artifacts in the United States history, they are not to be overlooked. National parks are not simply about the majestic lands that exist on this North American continent, but rather a larger ideal of preserving natural beauty for future generations. In 1872, Yellowstone was established as the first national park of the United States and the world, followed by Yosemite in 1890. Numerous other landmasses around the country were protected as national parks in the following decades.
Following the lead of the United States, countries around the world founded national parks in the ensuing 20th century. This includes Etosha National Park in Namibia, founded in 1907, Kruger National Park in South Africa, founded in 1926, and Iguazu National Park in Argentina and Brazil, founded in 1934.
Although the lands designated as national parks had existed far before the formation of the United States, it is what the country had done with this land that was actually revolutionary. In the late 19th century, conservationist and preservationist efforts were rare, historically speaking. The United States set a global precedent for protecting natural resources in a time of rapid industrialization.
This was due largely to the efforts of Theodore Roosevelt, often called the conservation president. He doubled the number of sites within the national park system. As president from 1901 to 1909, he signed legislation establishing 5 new national parks.
Countless other national parks have since been established all over the world. The United States' trailblazing actions further illustrate our American exceptionalism.
Located in the Black Hills of South Dakota, Mount Rushmore is one of the most iconic representations of the great leaders of our nation. Carved on the side of a mountain are the 60-foot sculptures of the heads of 4 American presidents. These are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Each of these men have had an immense and lasting impact on the foundations and current workings of our country, and are forever remembered through this artifact. George Washington was one of the 4 chosen figures because he is known as one of the fathers of our nation, as he led the Revolutionary War that gave us independence and did an outstanding job as the first president of our country, which our other presidents have modeled after. He represents the beginning of our nation and the great history that would follow. Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd president of our country, was one of the chosen figures. He is best known for being one of the main authors of the Declaration of Independence, and therefore promoting our democracy and individualization as a nation. Our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, was also chosen due to his efforts in preserving national unity and for his spirit in the fight for equality between men. The 26th president of our country, Theodore Roosevelt, is also carved on the mountain and remembered for his remarkable leadership, efforts in international affairs, and for being a promoter of the rights of the working man. The fact that we were able to create such an impressive artifact on a large scale shows the values of our society and the lengths we will go to show our national pride. What is even more impacting is not only the physical structure itself, but also the lives of these men on it. These men represent American exceptionalism, as they use their extraordinary talents and intellect to help form the foundation and systems the country would be built upon. They shaped the course of our history and allowed our nation to face such great triumphs, not experienced by many of the other countries on our earth. Their relentless efforts helped in shaping the most powerful country on earth, and therefore they are honored for that.
The Liberty Bell serves as a second cultural artifact that embodies the ideals of American exceptionalism and liberty. This bell has acted as a beacon of freedom for all Americans throughout various movements. The idea of liberty is evident in its inscription, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land and unto all the inhabitants thereof." This bell was a prominent symbol of freedom in the Revolutionary War, in which revolutionaries gathered in the Pennsylvania State House. The chiming of the bell represented their spirit of American independence. In the same manner, this bell was once again prominent in the abolitionist movements that would lead to the civil rights movement of the 60s, since many African Americans held strikes at Liberty Bell and chanted, "Let freedom ring." Also, in the women's rights movements, a suffragist, Miss Rosenberger, supported the creation of a replica of the bell to embody the women's movement. The Liberty Bell represents American exceptionalism because it demonstrates a nation that is willing to support its citizens in the struggle for a better way of life in all aspects of society. In a universal sense, this artifact serves as a call to action to the world in which other nations should embody the idea of freedom and liberty for all of its citizens. The United States acts as that safe haven that will offer peace and liberty to all kinds of individuals, regardless of their background.
The 305-foot statue of Lady Liberty is located on Liberty Island in the New York Harbor. Given as a gift from France, this artifact signifies American independence and the end of rule from Britain. The sculpture is based on the Roman goddess of liberty called Libertas. On one hand, she holds a tablet with July 4th, 1776 inscribed on it, the date of our American Declaration of Independence. On the other hand is a torch held high that lights the way towards freedom. A broken chain near the feet of Lady Liberty also signifies this broken link from Britain and the freedom that all Americans now proudly have. This is something that makes us unique and exceptional. We have been able to pursue freedom for all the inhabitants of our country, something that many other countries don't have. Here, people can be who they want to be, live the lifestyle they choose, and pursue their dreams without facing opposition by the government or a ruling body. The Statue of Liberty is one of the most influential artifacts that is a key representation of American exceptionalism. This statue reminds us all of our past, current, and future efforts towards justice for each and every American. The struggle early Americans faced in the wake of a new nation, the problems that arose as the basis of our nation was being founded, and the triumphs we've faced throughout time are represented through this statue. Our distinct and exceptional values, such as the freedom and justice for each and every American, are also commemorated in this statue. In order to be the greatest country on earth, a lot had to occur that allowed our country to be the way it is today. The American spirit is unlike any other, as it is one of passion, pursuit, and prosperity. Everything that is part of this remarkable history is remembered through Lady Liberty, and exemplifies to the rest of the world how the U.S. has triumphed through many struggles in order to be the most powerful country in the world.
George Washington was the first president of the United States and the leader of the Continental Army. George Washington began his career in the military in the French and Indian War. Throughout the Revolutionary War, George Washington served as both a leader and a fighter. He led Americans with spirit and might throughout the fight. During the Revolution, he led colonial troops towards victory over the British, and was later recognized as an icon and a national hero.
In 1787, George Washington was elected to become president of the Constitutional Convention. This convention led to the writing of the U.S. Constitution, which has served as a foundation for our country.
Washington proceeded to win the first presidential election of the United States. The manner by which he handled the presidency served as a basis for all future presidents to come. Against the pressure of the people, Washington only served for 2 whole terms. He believed that running a third term would exceed his powers as president. He also wanted assurance that this country would run smoothly with a new leader. His farewell address listed many main things that the United States should focus on upon his departure. Primarily, he emphasized the need for neutrality. He wished for the United States to remain uninvolved in political international affairs. This is most clearly seen throughout the time until the United States joined NATO in 1949. Political leaders typically revisited Washington's farewell address when considering international treaties. George Washington displayed American exceptionalism because he was, and is still, a model American. His courage, intellect, and fighting spirit during the creation of the United States makes Washington a prominent figure in our history. The Civil Rights Movement was a movement that primarily raised in the 1960s, which called for the equal treatment of all races within the United States.
A grand character within this movement was Martin Luther King Jr., a man who always strived to be a part of the civil rights movement. Throughout his youth, he struggled to find what truly inspired him to follow his dream of changing the world. He began his journey by getting an education and eventually won the Plafker Award for the most outstanding student. This award allowed him to apply for a fellowship in any graduate school of his choice. And so, he decided to go to Boston University, where he received more knowledge on how to unite a community.
After graduating, he began mobilizing the African American community. King became a leader for many nonviolent protests against discrimination. This included sit-ins and a 382-day boycott of Montgomery, Alabama's city bus lines. This was later called the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Most notably, during the March of Washington in 1963, his I Have a Dream speech outlined a future that he wanted to share with his children and the future generations of this nation. Internationally, this impacted many nations and their civil rights movements, and helped provide a new perspective to the revolution of times.
Just as I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
Not only have we inhabited the planet Earth, but we've also been somewhere else, closer to you. The moon landing, something never before executed in the entire history of our world, was now accomplished by Americans. Televised for the entire country to see, the moon landing united us in our pride and sense of nationalism. The whole country came together to watch history unfold before their eyes, watching as two Americans walked on the moon and planted an American flag on the ground. The impact of this moment would live on.
I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The fact that Americans could set their mind to something so grand as landing on the moon and successfully accomplishing this goal shows that America is truly exceptional. No other country successfully followed through with such a huge task, but America did not falter. We pulled through and succeeded. The Apollo program pushed America further in uniting the country.
Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
These were the words uttered by President George W. Bush on September 11, 2001, the day the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda under Osama bin Laden. This was a horrific event that profoundly affects Americans to this very day. Prior to this event, America was very divided. Imagine if your great civilization encountered such a tragic event. Our World Trade Centers, a symbol of Americanism, was destroyed. There was also an attack on the Pentagon, and on Flight 93, the passengers sacrificed their lives as they rebelled against the hijackers of their plane and landed on a field in Pennsylvania. Approximately 3,000 people died through this attack. But through this event, a sense of unity and compassion arose in the American heart. People from all ethnicities were deeply affected by this attack and rose as one to rebuild our great nation. 9/11 serves as a remarkable example of American exceptionalism, since it demonstrates how regardless of what the United States may suffer, it will rise once more. America was able to rise from its ashes and be reborn once more. In a universal sense, this event acts as a model for nations to follow, as seen through the idea of a city upon a hill, because we demonstrated that drive and determination and fortitude to demonstrate to the terrorists that we are not in fact weak, but we are an incredible nation that the world should strive to emulate.
These are just some of the many features that make America truly exceptional.